I want to talk about is how the city makes its money. We all know that the city does things like police and fire, but they have to pay those people in order to do that. So the very first thing that we're going to talk about is how we make our money. There's a few different ways that we do that. One of the main things that we do is property taxes. Now this is something that everybody that owns a house, your parents if they have a house, businesses, the Quick Trip and the Burger King that you guys go to, all those people pay money to the city to have property here. Those are some of that is the money that we use to pay for your police and your fire. One of the other things that we do to make money is we sell utilities. Some of the utilities that this city sells, and each city's different. Some cities sell different things than others, but most of the basics that every city sells is your water service and your sewer service. Some other cities will even sell your electricity. I noticed that your project is about energy sources. So some cities actually sell electricity as well. And then your trash service. Those are your basic utilities that most all cities sell. So what we'll do is we'll provide those services, and there's a cost of those services because we have to buy, for the water service, we have to buy the pipe. We have to pay someone to put the pipe in. We have to treat the water because we don't all want to drink water that comes straight out of the lake because it's dirty. So we have to clean that up, and we have to run it through the pipes, and we have to store it. And all those things cost money, so we charge for that service. So what do we do with all that money? All that money comes into what's called the general fund. That is the basic funding mechanism of the city. That's where we pay for all of the people that do those things that we talked about, all the equipment they use, the police officers and the police cars, the firemen and the fire engines. On top of all those two main basic services, and in this city, that number equals about $30 million. That's about how much we make each year off of property taxes and your utilities. We make additional money too. If you want to build something in the city, there is plans that you have to submit because we don't want people building buildings that aren't built right and then they just fall down and they hurt the people that live in our city. So we have to hire people like planners and engineers to go through the plans that people submit us. So they'll draw up how they want their building to be, what materials they're going to use, how they're going to tie the wood together, and we'll have someone look over all that stuff to make sure that it's being built right. So in order to do that, we've got to pay someone to look over those plans. So when you build something in the city, you have to have permit fees. And those fees go to pay the guy that looks over those plans to make sure your building's being built right. And then he'll give you a permit that says, yes, what you want to do is okay, and you can go ahead and you can do that. So another way that we make money is off of building inspections and permit fees. Because once we tell you you can build your building, then we have to come back and make sure that you're actually doing it. So then there's another guy that comes while you're building your building, and he checks to make sure that if you said you were going to do it this way, that he actually looks at what you're building at each part of the process and make sure that you're doing it the right way. On top of that, and more specifically towards your PBL guiding question, is franchise fees. Now that's a fancy word for the city gets a little bit of money for services that they don't sell. So most of them are your telephone and your cable TV and your internet. So what the city does is they develop a business relationship with a company, and they grant them a license to come and operate in your city. And what that company does for that privilege of doing that is every dollar that they sell, every dollar they make for the services that they sell in your city, they give a little bit of that back to the city. Now what that does is, the reason that they do that is that those specific utilities that I talked about, your phone, your high-speed internet, and your television, they all use cable systems. And those cables, they don't want to come in and have to buy land to put all those cables in. And most people aren't going to let them just run all kinds of cable on their property. So they have to put that on the city property. Because they're using the city property, they pay the city a little fee for that. And that's called a franchise fee. Our city makes about $2.5 to $3 million a year on that franchise fee. So overall, our city makes in the area of $40 million a year, and our city spends about $42 million a year. Now you may be thinking, we're spending more than we make, but some of that $2 million that we spend is on capital projects, and those are a little bit different than our operational costs. And the easiest way to explain that is your operational costs are your salaries and the equipment that you need to do your job. So it'd be like your pens and your paper. Well, capital costs are things like your buildings. Those are things that are going to have a life of 2 to 20 years. So we may be spending a little bit more than what we're making right now, but those are to build things like water towers, some of the pipe that we talked about, City Hall and new fire stations, things like that. So that's the basics of how we make our money, and how we spend our money. Now, getting back to decisions and how we make decisions at the city, I'm going to use your guiding question kind of as an example. Typically, things are decided by the council, and in order to get to the council, it has to be put on a city council agenda. Now, there are laws in place that governing bodies, which is like a city council, they can only talk about certain things. They have to let everyone in the city know what they're talking about. So they have to put it on an agenda, and they have to post it in a public place. That way, they can't just go and make a bunch of decisions without you knowing, because every person has the right in America to decide and have a voice on how their government is run. So in order to do that, any question that we're going to put before the council or any decision the council is going to make, they have to let everybody know we're going to decide this. Or let's take curfew, for example. Well, the council wants to decide if they're going to put a curfew in place. So they have to let everyone in the city know on this day, at this time, we'll be talking about this item. That way, if you're concerned about it or you want them to know something before they make a decision, you have a chance to come and talk about that. So we've established that you have to have an agenda, and you have to place the items that you're going to talk about at that meeting on that agenda. Well, how do items get on the agenda? They can get on there one of three different ways. Usually, they're either going to be staff directed. So in this case, how can we select the best energy efficient resource? Well, maybe that was, we've got a plant shutting down, and one of our staff engineers said, we're going to be out of power in 5 years. We need to start looking at another energy source. So you've got staff directed. That's the people that work at the city employees. They can put something on the agenda. A citizen can put something on the agenda. So if they've got an item that they want to talk